High above Earth's atmosphere, the Valderi observation vessel maintained its perfect cloak, its quantum shields rendering it invisible to what they believed were humanity's primitive detection systems. First observer Kethel stood before the ship's primary viewing screen, his scaled fingers tapping rhythmically against the smooth metallic surface of his command console. Behind him, a team of sinologists and military analysts worked in focused silence, documenting every detail of the species below. Another nuclear detonation test in their desert regions, reported second observer Mira, her voice carrying the distinctive musical undertones of the southern Valderi colonies. Their radiation containment protocols are basic at best. Kethel's violet eyes narrowed as he studied the tactical display. For 3 orbital cycles, they had watched this supposedly emerging species, gathering data for the Confederation's expansion protocols. Everything they had seen painted a picture of a civilization still stumbling through its technological adolescence. Primitive fission weapons, chemical rockets, internal combustion engines. It was almost embarrassing to watch. "Show me their global communication networks again," Kethel commanded. The main display shifted, showing the web of satellites, transmission towers, and undersea cables that humans used to stay connected. To Valderi eyes, it seemed hopelessly inefficient. No quantum entanglement, no psychic resonance fields, not even basic neural networking. "They still rely on electronic data transmission," Mira noted, her tone carrying just a hint of contempt. "Their entire civilization would collapse if we simply disrupted their satellite network." But something about the humans bothered Kethel. In his 300 cycles of observation work, he had never encountered a species quite like them. They were fragmented, divided into nations and factions, yet somehow managed to progress. Their technology was uneven, brilliant innovations in some areas while remaining centuries behind in others. They were, by any reasonable metric, primitive. Yet, play back the incident from their orbital station last week, he ordered. The screen showed a critical failure aboard humanity's primary space station. A micrometeorite had punctured one of their modules. By all logic, the crew should have died. Instead, they had improvised a repair using nothing but local materials and what Kethel could only describe as sheer stubborn determination. "Their adaptability indices are off the charts," commented Chief Analyst Friend from his station. "They solve problems in ways that our predictive algorithms consistently fail to anticipate." That was the troubling part. The Valderi Confederation had conquered 18 species across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. Their quantum computers could predict with 99.99% accuracy how a civilization would respond to any given scenario. But humans kept defying those predictions. "Show me their military installations again," Kethel commanded. The display shifted, showing what appeared to be painfully obvious defense facilities. Airfields with primitive jet aircraft, ports holding nuclear-powered vessels, bases with armored ground vehicles. All of it seemed so apparent. "No signs of energy shields," Mira reported. "No gravity manipulation technology. No faster-than-light capabilities. Their most advanced weapon systems rely on chemical propellants and nuclear fission." Yet something nagged at Kethel's instincts. The humans made no effort to hide their military capabilities. Everything was in plain sight. For a species that had demonstrated remarkable ingenuity in other areas, this seemed odd. "Run a deep scan of their ocean floors," he ordered suddenly. "Full quantum spectrum analysis." "Sir," Mira seemed puzzled. "We've already mapped their underwater facilities." "Do it again." The scan took several minutes, the ship's quantum sensors penetrating the planet's oceans. The results showed exactly what their previous scans had revealed: a network of basic sonar arrays, underwater military bases, and communication cables. "Nothing unusual, sir," Mira reported. "Everything exactly where we expected it to be." Kethel stared at the display, his scaled fingers now completely still on the console. "Exactly where we expected it to be," he repeated softly. "Doesn't that strike you as strange?" In 3 months of observation, we haven't found a single surprising military installation. Not one hidden base. Not one secret weapon facility. For a species that demonstrates remarkable creativity in crisis situations, their military infrastructure is suspiciously predictable. An uncomfortable silence fell over the bridge. The Valderi had built their empire on the principle that inferior species could be easily understood and predicted. Humanity checked all the boxes for a primitive civilization ready for conquest. Their technology was basic, their defenses obvious, their political structure fragmented. It should have been simple. Yet as Kethel studied the image of the blue planet below, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something fundamental about these humans. Every other species they had encountered had tried to reach for the stars as quickly as possible, developing space travel and energy weapons as soon as they could. Humans, despite having the basic physics knowledge necessary for such advances, seemed content with their slower progress, almost as if. "Send a probe to their lunar surface," he ordered suddenly. "Full spectrum analysis of the dark side of their moon." "Sir." Mira seemed startled. "Their primitive sensors will detect the probe's launch." "Yes," Kethel said softly. "They will." As the probe prepared for launch, Kethel wondered if the Confederation's assessment of humanity might be the greatest miscalculation in their 1,000 cycles of expansion. These humans, with their apparent technological limitations and obvious military displays, had achieved something no other species had managed. They had made the Valderi uncertain. The probe launched, its quantum drives flaring as it headed toward Earth's moon. On the viewing screen, Earth continued its serene rotation, the blue jewel in the cosmic darkness. Kethel watched it with new eyes, wondering what other surprises this seemingly primitive species might have hidden beneath their carefully crafted appearance of technological adolescence. "Contact First Command," he ordered quietly. Tell them we need to review the conquest protocols. There's something different about this species, something we don't understand yet." As his crew carried out his orders, Kethel continued to study Earth, a new respect growing in his mind. The humans had achieved something remarkable. They had made the galaxy's premier surveillance species doubt its own observations, and in Kethel's experience, that might be the most advanced technology of all. The United Earth Council chamber in Geneva hummed with quiet conversation as Ambassador Sarah Chen studied the holographic projection of the Valderi ultimatum. The alien text floated in the air, its translation scrolling beneath in multiple Earth languages. Around her, representatives from every nation maintained a composure that would have surprised their alien observers. "They're giving us 72 hours to surrender," she announced to the assembled council, her voice steady. "They believe our detection of their probe was accidental. They think we're panicking." A soft chuckle rippled through the chamber. General Marcus Rodriguez of the Combined Earth Defense Force leaned forward in his seat, his weathered face illuminated by the holographic display. Their probe performed exactly as expected. Surface scans only, no deep penetration of the lunar crust. They saw exactly what we wanted them to see. The chamber's quantum-shielded walls, invisible to Valderi sensors, continued their constant analysis of possible surveillance attempts. For decades, humanity had known they weren't alone. The discovery of alien observation satellites in the late 2030s had led to the most ambitious deception program in human history. Director Patel. Sarah called out, "How are our friends responding to their own scans?" Dr. Aisha Patel, head of the Technological Advancement Division, activated her own holographic display. "The Valderi are following their standard conquest protocols to the letter. Their scans show them a fragmented Earth, technologically primitive by their standards. Our surface installations are performing perfectly. Every secret facility they detect is broadcasting exactly the level of technology they expect to find." The room's attention turned to a new hologram showing the Valderi fleet now approaching Earth orbit. To alien sensors, it would appear as though these ships had suddenly emerged from faster-than-light travel. In reality, Earth's quantum detection grid had tracked their approach for weeks. They're positioning themselves for what they believe will be a simple show of force, General Rodriguez continued. Their tactical formations suggest they expect minimal resistance, standard intimidation protocols. Sarah stood, her simple business suit concealing more advanced technology than the entire Valderi fleet. The question before this council is simple. Do we proceed with Protocol Omega? The chamber grew silent. Protocol Omega had been developed over 30 years of careful planning. While the Valderi and other alien races focused on obvious displays of technological power, humanity had taken a different path. They had learned to hide in plain sight, to make their achievements invisible to those who judged advancement by its most visible manifestations. The lunar defense grid is ready, announced General Rodriguez. The moment they attempt their show of force, we can activate our true defensive capabilities. Dr. Patel's fingers danced across her holographic interface. Our quantum entanglement network remains undetected. The Valderi still believe we're dependent on satellite communications. The moment they attempt to disable our primitive communication systems, they'll find themselves facing something they've never encountered before. Sarah nodded slowly. And the Artemis Protocol. The room grew even quieter. The Artemis Protocol represented humanity's ultimate response to alien aggression, not a weapon, but a complete reimagining of how warfare could be conducted. Ready, Dr. Patel confirmed. Our distributed quantum consciousness network can be activated at a moment's notice. While they've been watching our visible technology, we've been building something they can't even comprehend. Sarah turned to face the massive windows overlooking Lake Geneva. To any observer, the view would show a simple government building. In reality, every window was an advanced sensor array, every architectural feature a disguised weapons platform. Send our response to the Valderi, she commanded. The room's AI system acknowledged with a subtle pulse of light. On board the Valderi command ship, First Observer Kethel received Earth's response with growing unease. The message was simple, almost primitive in its directness. We acknowledge your presence and welcome diplomatic dialogue. No panic, no desperate pleas, no signs of military mobilization. Just a calm acknowledgement that sent chills down his spine. They can't possibly understand the gravity of their situation, Mira insisted, but her voice carried a note of uncertainty. Kethel studied the message again. 3 months of observation had shown them a primitive species dependent on basic technology. Their response should have been fear, chaos, desperate attempts at defense. Instead, launch the first warning strike, he ordered, his voice heavy. Target their satellite network as planned. As the order was given, Kethel couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something fundamental about these humans. Their apparent primitive nature, their obvious military installations, their calm response to overwhelming force, all of it felt wrong. In Geneva, Sarah Chen watched the Valderi ships move into attack position. They're proceeding exactly as predicted, she announced to the Council. All elements of Protocol Omega are in position. Humanity has spent decades preparing for this moment, appearing weak while building strength they couldn't imagine. She turned to face the assembled leaders of Earth, her expression resolute. Let them fire the first shot. Let them think they're crippling our communications. And then we show them what humanity has really become. As the Valderi weapons powered up, targeting what they believed were Earth's vital satellite networks, humanity's true defensive grid hummed silently beneath the lunar surface, waiting to reveal that technology wasn't always about what you could see. Sometimes, the most advanced civilization was the one that had learned to hide its power in plain sight. The Valderi strike force launched their first salvo with practiced precision. Hundreds of energy beams lanced toward Earth's satellite network, their targeting computers predicting a complete communications blackout within seconds. First Observer Kethel watched the tactical display, waiting for the chaos that would surely follow as humanity's primitive technology failed. The beams struck their targets perfectly. Satellites exploded in brilliant flashes of light, creating a spectacular display visible from both space and Earth's surface. Kethel allowed himself a small smile. Everything was proceeding according to standard conquest protocols. And then his tactical officer spoke, confusion evident in his voice. "Sir, we're still detecting human communications." "Impossible," Mira snapped. "We just destroyed their entire satellite network." Nevertheless, the tactical officer insisted, their communications continue uninterrupted. In fact, they seem to be improving in clarity. In Geneva's United Earth Council chamber, Sarah Chen watched the Valdares' opening move with quiet satisfaction. "They took the bait," she announced. "All decoy satellites successfully eliminated. Initiating Phase 2, deep beneath the lunar surface, in chambers that had taken decades to construct in absolute secrecy, Earth's true defense grid awakened. What the Valdari had detected as simple satellites had been elaborate decoys, designed specifically to be targeted and destroyed. Earth's real communication network, based on quantum entanglement technology, had been operating silently alongside them for years. "Signal from Lunar Command," General Rodriguez reported. "Ghost fleet emerging from subsurface hangars. On the dark side of the moon." Massive doors hidden beneath the lunar regolith began to slide open. What emerged would shatter every assumption the Valdari had made about human technological capabilities. On the Valdari command ship, alarms began to sound. Multiple contacts emerging from the lunar surface. The tactical officer shouted, "Energy signatures. This is impossible." Kethel rushed to the tactical display, his violet eyes widening in shock. The vessels rising from the moon's surface defied everything they thought they knew about human technology. These weren't the chemical-powered rockets or primitive nuclear ships they'd observed. These were something else entirely. "Full spectrum analysis," he ordered, his voice tight with tension. "What are we looking at?" The data scrolling across his screen made no sense. The human vessels seemed to bend space around them, their hulls shifting and adapting like living organisms. They employed no conventional propulsion systems, instead moving through space as if they were part of it. In Geneva, Dr. Patel's fingers danced across her holographic controls. Ghost fleet fully deployed. Quantum camouflage systems operating at optimal efficiency. The Valdari are seeing our ships for the first time, and their sensors can't make sense of what they're detecting. The Ghost fleet was humanity's masterpiece of deception and innovation. While alien observers watched Earth's obvious space program, these ships had been constructed in absolute secrecy. They represented a completely different approach to space warfare, not bigger guns or stronger shields, but a fundamental reimagining of what a warship could be. "They're attempting to target our vessels," General Rodriguez reported, a note of satisfaction in his voice. "Their targeting systems can't lock on. The quantum fluctuation fields are working perfectly." The Ghost Fleet ships seemed to flicker in and out of reality, their positions impossible to pin down. They weren't just ships. They were physical manifestations of humanity's greatest scientific achievement, the ability to manipulate the quantum fabric of space itself. On the Valdari command ship, panic was beginning to set in. "Our weapons can't achieve target lock," the tactical officer reported. "These vessels, they're not behaving according to any known physics." Kethel watched in growing horror as the human ships approached his fleet. No energy weapons, no conventional shields, no massive engines. Instead, space itself seemed to move with them, around them, through them. "All ships, open fire," he ordered. "Full spread, all weapons." The Valdari fleet erupted in a dazzling display of energy weapons and plasma torpedoes. The space between the two fleets filled with enough firepower to reduce a small moon to atoms. And yet, no impacts. Mira whispered, her voice filled with disbelief. How is this possible? The human ships hadn't dodged or blocked the attacks. Instead, the laws of physics themselves seemed to bend around them, causing the Valdari weapons to pass through space their ships no longer occupied, or perhaps had never occupied at all. In Geneva, Sarah Chen allowed herself a small smile. "They're beginning to understand," she said quietly. "Show them the next phase." The Ghost Fleet ships began to emit a strange, pulsing field that spread through space like ripples in a pond. Where it touched Valderi ships, their advanced technology began to behave erratically. Quantum computers crashed, weapon systems failed, and communication networks dissolved into chaos. "What are they doing to us?" Kethel demanded, watching as his mighty fleet began to lose cohesion. The answer, had he known it, would have shattered his understanding of technological advancement. Humanity hadn't tried to match the Valderi's level of technology. Instead, they had gone in a completely different direction, developing ways to manipulate the fundamental forces of reality itself. Signal from the human fleet, his communication officer reported, voice shaking. On his screen, a simple message appeared. "This is humanity's first and only warning. We have spent decades preparing not to match your technology, but to transcend it. Withdraw now, or witness capabilities your sensors cannot comprehend, and your weapons cannot touch." Kethel stared at the message, then at the impossible human ships that defied everything he thought he knew about physics and warfare. For the first time in his long career, he faced an enemy that hadn't just surpassed his expectations. They had rendered them meaningless. First Observer Kethel stood frozen before his command console as the impossible unfolded before him. The Valderi fleet, pride of the Confederation's military might, hung powerless in space. Their advanced weapons, the product of 1,000 years of technological evolution, had proven useless against humanity's Ghost Fleet. New energy signature detected, his tactical officer reported, voice trembling. It's coming from Earth's oceans. Beneath Earth's waters, humanity's second surprise was awakening. What the Valderi had dismissed as primitive sonar arrays and underwater bases began to shift and transform. The oceans themselves seemed to come alive with technological marvels that had been hidden in plain sight. In the Geneva Command Center, Dr. Patel's hands moved across her control interface with practiced precision. Initiating Leviathan Protocol. Deep Sea Quantum Matrices Online. The oceans erupted. Massive structures rose from the depths, but these were no conventional weapons platforms. They were biotechnological marvels, seamless fusions of organic and quantum engineering that the Valderi sensors couldn't even begin to classify. "What are we seeing?" Mira whispered aboard the Valderi command ship, her professional demeanor cracking as she watched the impossible readings on her screen. The answer would have stunned her. While the Valderi had focused on building bigger ships and more powerful weapons, humanity had taken a fundamentally different approach. They had learned to work with Earth's biosphere, creating technologies that were as much alive as they were mechanical. Multiple quantum signatures detected in Earth's atmosphere. The tactical officer reported, his voice rising in pitch. "The humans, they're doing something to the planet's magnetic field." Sarah Chen nodded to General Rodriguez. "Initiate the Aurora Network." Earth's magnetic field, which the Valderi had considered nothing more than a natural phenomenon to be ignored, suddenly revealed its true nature. For decades, humanity had been seeding it with quantum-scale machines, turning the planet's natural defenses into something far more formidable. The Aurora Network activated. Streams of charged particles, controlled with precision that bordered on artistry, began to weave between the Ghost Fleet ships. Earth's magnetic field transformed into a vast defensive web, channeling energy in ways that defied conventional physics. "Sir," Kethel's science officer called out, "these readings, they're suggesting that the humans have found a way to manipulate quantum fields on a planetary scale." In Geneva, Dr. Patel allowed herself a moment of pride. The Valderi built their empire on the assumption that technological progress followed a predictable path. They never considered that a species might take a completely different road. The Ghost Fleet ships began to move in perfect synchronization with the Aurora Network. They weren't just vessels anymore. They were nodes in a vast quantum web that encompassed Earth's entire sphere of influence. Every weapon the Valderi fired was not just avoided but absorbed. Its energy redistributed through the network and transformed. "They're not just defending," Kethel realized, horror dawning in his voice. They're learning. Every attack we launch teaches them more about our technology. He was right. Humanity's quantum systems weren't just defensive measures. They were vast learning networks. Each Valderi weapon signature was analyzed. Each tactic studied and countered before it could be fully deployed. The Leviathan structures rising from Earth's oceans began to emit fields that interfered with the Valderi ship's quantum cores. Ships that had been merely disabled now found their very operating systems being rewritten. The humans weren't trying to destroy the Valderi fleet. They were reprogramming it. Full retreat, Kethel ordered. But it was too late. The Aurora network had already enclosed his fleet in a quantum field that made conventional faster-than-light travel impossible. They were trapped, not by physical barriers or energy fields, but by localized alterations to the laws of physics themselves. In Geneva, Sarah Chen watched the tactical display with calm satisfaction. "Send the final message," she ordered. Aboard his ship, Kethel received the transmission. Unlike the previous warning, this one came with a full data packet that made his quantum computers strain to process it. As he read, his understanding of the universe itself began to crack. The humans hadn't just developed new weapons or defenses. They had created an entirely new paradigm of technological advancement. While the Valderi had built their civilization on the assumption that progress meant bigger, faster, and more powerful, humanity had asked different questions entirely. Instead of asking how to build better weapons, they had asked how to make weapons unnecessary. Instead of developing stronger shields, they had learned to work with the fundamental forces of reality. Their technology wasn't about domination. It was about understanding. "Signal from Earth," his communication officer announced. They're offering to share their technology with us." Kethel stared at the tactical display, watching as his mighty fleet hung helpless in space, surrounded by technological marvels that his most advanced sensors couldn't even properly detect. The humans had achieved something no other species in known space had managed. They had made warfare itself obsolete. The quantum data packet contained more than just technical specifications. It contained a fundamental truth that the Valderi, in all their centuries of expansion, had never considered. True advancement wasn't about building bigger weapons, but about finding ways to make weapons unnecessary. They weren't hiding their technology, Kethel realized. They were hiding their entire philosophical approach to technological development. And we never even thought to look for it. 1 month after the confrontation in Earth's orbit, the United Galactic Council convened an emergency session. For the first time in its 1,000-year history, representatives from every major spacefaring civilization gathered not to discuss war or territorial disputes, but to understand how they had all been so fundamentally wrong about a single species. The great hall of the council hummed with nervous energy as Sarah Chen took the podium. Behind her, a holographic display showed the Valderi fleet, now peacefully docked at Earth's new orbital stations, undergoing what the humans called technological integration. For centuries, Sarah began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. The galaxy has measured civilization by its most visible achievements. Bigger ships, stronger weapons, faster drives. Humanity chose a different path. In orbit around Earth, the Ghost Fleet ships had begun teaching the Valderi vessels a new way of existing. The quantum integration wasn't just changing their technology. It was transforming their fundamental understanding of what technology could be. "We didn't hide our advancement," Sarah continued. "We hid our philosophy. While you built weapons to dominate space, we learned to work with it. While you developed shields to resist nature, we found ways to become part of it." The assembled representatives watched in stunned silence as she activated a holographic demonstration. It showed Earth's quantum defense network, not as a weapons system, but as an extension of natural universal forces. The Aurora network wasn't fighting physics. It was dancing with it. First observer Kethel, now serving as the Valderi's chief diplomatic liaison to Earth, stood to address the council. "My people have spent the past month studying human technology. What we've learned has shaken the foundation of everything we thought we knew about technological progress." He gestured, and a holographic display shifted to show the Leviathan structures in Earth's oceans. "These aren't weapons," he explained. "They're a symbiosis of technology and nature that we never imagined possible." The humans didn't conquer their world's biosphere. They became its partners. In the months since the confrontation, the galaxy had watched in amazement as humanity began sharing their technological philosophy. It wasn't about superiority or dominance. It was about understanding, integration, and harmony with the fundamental forces of the universe. "The quantum cores of our ships," Kethel continued, "which we thought were the pinnacle of our achievement, now seem crude compared to human quantum integration technology. They don't force quantum states. They work with them. They don't fight uncertainty. They embrace it." Dr. Patel, standing beside Sarah, activated another holographic display. This one showed the transformation of a Valdari warship as it integrated with human quantum systems. The massive weapons arrays weren't being removed. They were being repurposed, transformed into nodes of a vast communication and understanding network. "We offer this technology freely," Sarah announced to the stunned council. "Not as a weapon, not as a means of control, but as a new way of thinking about our place in the universe." The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't just offering advanced technology. They were offering a completely new paradigm of civilization. Warfare wasn't made obsolete through superior firepower, but through superior understanding. "Already," Dr. Patel added, "we're seeing unprecedented results. The Valdari ships integrated with our quantum networks are discovering principles of physics we never imagined. They're not just vessels anymore. They're explorers of reality itself." The council chamber erupted in discussion. Representatives from 100 species all realized the same thing simultaneously. Humanity hadn't just developed better technology. They had evolved beyond the very concept of technological warfare. "The choice before this council is simple," Sarah concluded. "Continue the old path of domination and conflict, or join us in exploring what's possible when we stop fighting the universe and start working with it." In Earth orbit, the Ghost Fleet ships continued their silent dance with space itself. The Aurora network pulsed with possibilities, each quantum fluctuation a reminder that the true measure of advancement wasn't in destruction, but in understanding. Kethel watched the proceedings with new eyes. His people had come to Earth expecting to find a primitive species ready for conquest. Instead, they had found teachers who showed them that true power lay not in dominating reality, but in becoming one with it. "We thought we were advanced," he whispered to Sarah after the session. "But we were children playing with toys, thinking they were weapons. You showed us what real advancement looks like." As the council session concluded, representatives from across the galaxy lined up to establish diplomatic relations with Earth. But they weren't seeking weapons or defenses. They were seeking understanding. The understanding that humanity had gained by taking a road less traveled. The galaxy would never be the same. The species that everyone had dismissed as primitive had shown them all the truth they had forgotten. That the greatest power comes not from fighting against the universe, but from learning to dance with it. And in the depths of space, humanity's quantum networks continued to expand, not as a barrier or a weapon, but as a bridge to a future where technology wasn't a means of destruction, but a path to understanding the very fabric of reality itself. The ultimatum. In the grand chamber of the Galactic Confederation's central spire, laughter echoed off the crystalline walls. The assembled alien dignitaries, representing hundreds of spacefaring species, found amusement in the latest transmission from Earth. On the holographic display hovering above the council table, the stern face of Admiral Helena Chen, Earth's appointed ambassador, flickered and faded. "This is humanity's final warning." Her words lingered in the air. "Cease all incursions into our territory immediately, or face the consequences." High Counselor Zixthor, a towering insectoid with iridescent wings, chittered in what passed for laughter among his species. "How quaint," he said, mandibles clicking. "The humans believe they can dictate terms to us." Around the table, various alien representatives joined in the mockery. Some pulsed with bioluminescent mirth, others emitted low-frequency rumbles of amusement. To them, humanity was nothing more than an upstart species, barely a century into faster-than-light travel, trying to play in the big leagues of galactic politics. Only one figure remained silent amidst the joviality. Sirax, the Confederation's chief xenoanthropologist, observed the reactions with growing unease. His species, the Lyrani, were known for their empathic abilities and long-term thinking. Something in Admiral Chen's eyes had stirred a sense of foreboding in him. Perhaps, Sirax ventured, his melodic voice cutting through the laughter, we should consider the human's request more seriously. The chamber fell silent, all eyes and sensory organs turning to the Lyrani. Zixthor's compound eyes narrowed. Explain yourself, Sirax. Surely you don't suggest we bow to the demands of these primitives. Sirax rose, his slender form casting a long shadow across the council table. I suggest nothing of the sort, High Counselor. I merely propose that we examine the situation more closely. The humans have shown remarkable adaptability and resourcefulness in the short time since their inclusion in galactic affairs. Resourcefulness, scoffed Galzera, the Tritonian trade minister. Her tentacles writhed in agitation. They've barely mastered gravitic manipulation. Their ships are slow, their weapons primitive. What could they possibly do against the might of the Confederation? Sirax activated his personal holoprojector, displaying a timeline of human technological advancements. Observe, he said, gesturing to the rapidly ascending line. In just over a century, they've progressed from chemical rockets to rudimentary faster-than-light travel. Their rate of advancement far exceeds our models. A statistical anomaly, dismissed Zixthor. They'll plateau soon enough, as all species do. And if they don't? Sirax pressed. We've been harvesting resources from their outer colonies for decades now, always staying just within the bounds of our trade agreements. But those agreements were made when humanity was new to the galactic stage, desperate for any form of recognition. The council chamber grew quiet as Sirax's words sank in. It was true. The Confederation had taken advantage of humanity's initial eagerness to join the galactic community. Resource-rich planets on the fringes of human space had been systematically stripped, always with the flimsiest of legal justifications. Are you suggesting we've underestimated them? Asked Velna, the Australian diplomat, her ethereal form shimmering with curiosity. I'm suggesting, Sirax said carefully, that we may have pushed them too far. This ultimatum isn't the act of a species cowering in fear. It's a line drawn in the sand by one that believes it has nothing left to lose. High Counselor, Zixthor buzzed in irritation. Enough of this baseless speculation. The humans are bluffing. Nothing more. We will proceed as planned. The harvester fleets will begin operations in the Proxima Centauri system next week. But that's one of their core worlds. Sirax protested. The agreements never extended that far into their territory. The agreements, Zixthor said, rising to his full, imposing height, are whatever we say they are. This council has made its decision. We will not be cowed by empty threats from a species that still thinks projectile weapons are the hype of military technology. As the council adjourned, Sirax lingered, staring at the now empty space where Admiral Chen's hologram had been. He couldn't shake the feeling that the Confederation was making a grave mistake. Light years away on Earth, Admiral Helena Chen stood before the United Earth Defense Council. The chamber, buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, was a far cry from the opulent halls of the Galactic Confederation. Here, grim-faced military officers and civilian leaders sat in tiered rows, their attention fixed on Chen. They laughed, Chen reported, her voice tight with controlled anger. Just as we predicted they would. President Amelia Rosario, a woman whose quiet demeanor belied a will of steel, nodded slowly. Then we proceed as planned. Admiral, you have authorization to activate Project Phoenix. A ripple of tension passed through the room. Project Phoenix, the fruit of decades of clandestine research and development, represented humanity's best-kept secret, and its greatest hope. Madam President, General Akira Tanaka interjected, once we initiate Phoenix, there's no going back. The Confederation will retaliate with everything they have. Rosario's gaze swept the room, meeting the eyes of each council member. And we will be ready. For too long, we've played the part they expected of us. The naive newcomers, grateful for any scraps from the galactic table. But in secret, we've prepared. Every insult, every unfair treaty, every stripped world, we've used them all as fuel for this moment. She stood, her presence filling the austere chamber. Humanity will no longer be the galaxy's punching bag. We've given them every chance to treat us as equals. Now, we'll take our place among the stars, whether they like it or not. Admiral Chen stepped forward, her uniform crisp, her posture rigid. The Phoenix fleet is ready, Madam President. Crews are on standby, awaiting final orders. President Rosario took a deep breath, the weight of history pressing down upon her shoulders. With these next words, she would set in motion events that would reshape the galaxy. Admiral Chen, she said, her voice unwavering, you have your orders. Initiate Project Phoenix. Let's show the Confederation exactly what humanity is capable of. As Chen saluted and turned to leave, klaxons suddenly blared throughout the complex. General Tanaka's comm unit lit up, his face paling as he read the incoming message. Madam President, he said, his voice hoarse, we're receiving reports. The Confederation's harvester fleets, they're not waiting. They've begun operations in the Proxima Centauri system. A heavy silence fell over the chamber. Proxima Centauri, humanity's first extrasolar colony, home to millions. The Confederation had crossed a line they could never uncross. President Rosario's eyes hardened, her decision made even before she spoke. Admiral Chen, update your orders. The Phoenix fleet is to deploy immediately. Our primary target is now the harvester fleets in Proxima Centauri. She turned to address the rest of the council, her voice ringing with determination. Ladies and gentlemen, as of this moment, we are at war with the Galactic Confederation. May God have mercy on us all, because we will show them none. As the council chamber erupted into a flurry of activity, orders being relayed and war plans set into motion, humanity prepared to reveal its true strength to an unsuspecting galaxy. The age of acquiescence was over. The time for reckoning had come. The hidden fleet. The Proxima Centauri system blazed with the light of weapons fire. The Confederation's harvester fleets, massive city-sized ships designed to strip entire planets of resources, hung in low orbit around Proxima, humanity's first extrasolar colony. Their energy beams lanced down to the surface, vaporizing swaths of the terraformed landscape as they extracted valuable minerals and compounds. Aboard the lead harvester, Fleet Commander Grixthal surveyed the operation with smug satisfaction. His tentacles writhed in pleasure as he watched the efficiency of his ships. See how easily we take what we want. He boasted to his bridge crew. These humans are powerless to stop us. As if in answer to his hubris, alarms suddenly blared across the harvester's bridge. Anomalous energy readings detected, cried out the sensor operator, their bioluminescent patches flashing in agitation. Grixthal slithered to the main view screen, his eyes widening in disbelief. Emerging from the dark side of Proxima, these moon were ships, hundreds of them. But these were not the primitive vessels the Confederation had come to expect from humanity. These ships were sleek, predatory, their hulls gleaming with an unknown alloy that seemed to drink in the starlight. Impossible, Grixthal whispered. Where did they come from? How did we not detect them? Before he could issue any orders, the human fleet opened fire. Beams of coherent light, far more powerful than anything the Confederation possessed, lanced out across space. The first volley alone reduced 3 harvesters to expanding clouds of superheated plasma. Panic erupted across the Confederation fleet. Ships tried to maneuver, to bring their own weapons to bear, but the human vessels moved with impossible speed and precision. It was like watching apex predators tear through a helpless herd. Aboard the EFS Phoenix, the flagship of humanity's hidden fleet, Admiral Helena Chen watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. Decades of preparation, of sacrifices made in secret, were finally bearing fruit. "Status report," she commanded, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Captain Zara Okafor, her second in command, responded crisply. "Our stealth systems performed flawlessly, Admiral. The enemy had no warning. We've destroyed 30% of their fleet in the opening salvo, with minimal damage to our own ships." Chen nodded, allowing herself a small smile. The quantum-entangled communication network, another secret development, was proving its worth. Their ships coordinated with a synchronicity that bordered on precognition. "Signal the fleet," Chen ordered. "Phase 2 begins now. Drive them from the system." Across the battlefield, human ships executed maneuvers that defied the known laws of physics. Inertial dampeners, reverse-engineered from captured Confederation tech and improved upon in secret, allowed for turns and accelerations that left the alien vessels floundering. Grixthal watched in horror as his mighty fleet was systematically dismantled. "This is impossible," he raged. "They're savages, primitives. How can they possess such technology?" A junior officer, braver or more foolish than the rest, spoke up. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the human flagship." The main screen flickered to life, revealing Admiral Chen's stern visage. "This is Admiral Helena Chen of the Earth Federation ship Phoenix. You have violated sovereign human territory for the last time. Surrender now, or be destroyed." Grixthal's pride warred with his survival instinct. In the end, self-preservation won out. We surrender," he croaked, his tentacles drooping in defeat. Chen's expression didn't change. "Wise choice. You will order your remaining ships to power down all weapons and propulsion systems. Any ship that fails to comply will be immediately destroyed. Is that understood?" As Grixthal hurried to comply, Chen turned her attention to the rest of the system. "Captain Okafor, status of Proxima." Zara's fingers danced over her console. "Surface damage is extensive, Admiral, but primarily to uninhabited areas. The Confederation didn't have time to reach the major population centers. Casualty reports are still coming in, but initial estimates are far lower than we feared." Chen allowed herself a moment of relief. They had arrived in time. The colonists of Proxima would live to see another day. But this was only the beginning. "Send word to Earth," she ordered. "Operation Phoenix is a success. We've bloodied the Confederation's nose. Now we prepare for their retaliation." As the last of the harvester ships surrendered, news of the battle spread across human space like wildfire. On 100 worlds and stations, humans who had lived for generations under the thumb of alien oppression looked to the skies with newfound hope. But in the grand chamber of the Galactic Confederation's central spire, the mood was anything but hopeful. High Counselor Zixthor stared in disbelief at the casualty reports streaming in from Proxima Centauri. "How?" he chittered, his wings vibrating in agitation. "How could they have hidden such a fleet? Such technology?" Sarax, the Lyurani xenoanthropologist, stepped forward. "I warned you, High Counselor. We underestimated them. We pushed them too far. And now we face the consequences." Zixthor's compound eyes narrowed. "You knew of this?" "I suspected," Sarax replied calmly. "The humans have always been more clever than we gave them credit for. We saw what we wanted to see. A young, naive species we could exploit. We never bothered to look deeper." The council chamber erupted into chaos as accusations flew. Some called for immediate retaliation, others for negotiation. But all knew that the galaxy had changed irrevocably. Humanity was no longer a footnote in galactic affairs. They were a force to be reckoned with. As the Confederation leadership bickered, humanity pressed its advantage. The Phoenix fleet, no longer hidden, struck at key Confederation outposts and resource depots throughout human space. Centuries of detailed intelligence gathering, painstakingly compiled by generations of human spies and sympathetic aliens, now paid dividends. On Earth, President Emilio Rosario addressed a joint session of the global parliament. Her words were broadcast to every human settlement, from the underground cities of Mars to the farthest frontier outpost. For too long, we have endured the condescension and exploitation of the Galactic Confederation, she declared, her voice ringing with conviction. They thought us weak. They thought us primitive. Today, we have shown them the error of their ways. Cheers erupted from the assembled lawmakers and from crowds gathered in plazas and forums across human space. But this is only the beginning, Rosario continued, her tone growing somber. The Confederation will not take this lying down. They will strike back, and when they do, we must be ready. The road ahead will be long and fraught with danger, but we have prepared for this moment for generations. United, we will forge a new future for humanity among the stars. As humanity celebrated its first major victory, Admiral Chen and her fleet regrouped in the Proxima Centauri system. Engineers and medical teams were dispatched to the surface to aid in recovery efforts, while intelligence officers began the task of interrogating their Confederation prisoners. Chen stood at the viewport of her ready room, gazing out at the stars. They looked different now, full of possibility rather than threat. But she knew the real challenge was yet to come. The Confederation would not take this humiliation lightly. Their retaliation would be swift and brutal. We've opened Pandora's box, she murmured to herself. Now we have to be ready for whatever comes out. As if in answer to her thoughts, a priority alert chimed on her comm unit. Captain Okafor's voice came through, tense with urgency. Admiral, we're detecting massive hyperspace signatures approaching the system. It's the Confederation. They're coming in force. Chen's jaw set in grim determination. The next phase of the war was about to begin. Humanity had thrown down the gauntlet. Now, they would have to prove they could stand toe-to-toe with the giants of the galaxy. Battle stations, she ordered, striding back to the bridge. Let's show them what humanity can really do. As klaxons blared throughout the Phoenix fleet, the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath. The fate of not just humanity, but the entire galaxy hung in the balance. The Proxima Centauri system was about to become the crucible in which a new galactic order would be forged. Counterattack and revelations. The void above Proxima Centauri erupted into chaos as the Confederation's armada dropped out of hyperspace. Thousands of ships, from nimble fighters to lumbering dreadnoughts, filled the system. At their center loomed the Titan, the Confederation's flagship, and a mobile battle station the size of a small moon. Admiral Chen's voice rang out across the Phoenix fleet's comm channels. All ships, battle formation Delta. Remember your training. We may be outnumbered, but we are not outmatched. As the two fleets clashed, it quickly became apparent that this battle would be unlike any in galactic history. The Phoenix fleet's advanced technology allowed them to punch far above their weight, their weapons and shields proving a match for ships many times their size. But the Confederation had numbers on their side, and desperation lent them strength. For the first time in centuries, they faced an existential threat, and they fought with the ferocity of a cornered animal. Aboard the Titan, Grand Admiral Calvor, Supreme Commander of the Confederation's military forces, watched the battle unfold with growing unease. How? He growled, his scaled skin shifting colors with his agitation. How did they develop such technology in secret? His second-in-command, a Volcran named Zira, her crystalline form glittering under the bridge lights, spoke up. Sir, our initial analysis suggests their technology is familiar. It's as if they've taken our own advancements and pushed them to theoretical limits we never thought possible. Calvor's eyes narrowed. Impossible. There's no way they could have acquired our tech, let alone improved upon it. As if in response to his denial, a squad of Phoenix fighters executed a maneuver that seemed to defy the laws of physics, their inertial dampeners allowing for turns so sharp they appeared to teleport. In their wake, a Confederation cruiser erupted into flames. On the bridge of the ESS Phoenix, Admiral Chen coordinated the human counterattack with cold precision. "Focus fire on their command ships," she ordered. "Disrupt their chain of command." But even as the Phoenix fleet held its own, Chen knew they were fighting against time. The Confederation's numbers meant they could afford losses that would cripple the human forces. They needed a game-changer. "Status on Operation Hydra," she asked Captain Okafor. Zara checked her console, a grim smile playing on her lips. "Teams are in position, Admiral. Awaiting your command." Chen nodded. This was the moment of truth, the fruition of decades of covert operations and sleeper agents. "Initiate Operation Hydra. All teams, execute." Across the Confederation fleet, chaos erupted. Ships suddenly lost power, weapon systems went offline, and in some cases, life support began to fail. Confusion reigned as captains tried desperately to regain control of their vessels. On the Titan, alarms blared as system after system fell to the invisible attack. Grand Admiral Calvor roared in frustration. "What's happening? How are they doing this?" A junior officer, his tendrils quivering with fear, approached. "Sir, we're detecting numerous system intrusions. It appears to be some kind of virus, but it's like nothing we've ever seen before." Zira's crystalline form pulsed with realization. "It's not just a virus. It's AI-driven, adapting to our countermeasures in real time." "But how?" "AI of this level is prohibited throughout known space." As the Confederation fleet fell into disarray, the Phoenix fleet pressed its advantage. Ships that had seemed invincible mere moments ago now fell to concentrated fire, unable to raise shields or return fire. But amid the chaos, a new threat emerged. From the depths of the Titan, massive cannons extended, their barrels glowing with barely contained energy. "Graviton Lance detected," shouted a sensor officer on the Phoenix. Energy readings off the charts. Chen's eyes widened. The Graviton Lance was a theoretical superweapon, capable of tearing apart the very fabric of space-time. If the Confederation had managed to build one. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," she commanded. But even as the words left her mouth, she knew it might not be enough. The Titan fired, and space itself seemed to scream. A beam of concentrated gravitational energy lanced out, narrowly missing the Phoenix but catching several other human ships in its path. They didn't explode so much as implode, crushed into singularities by the unimaginable forces unleashed upon them. "Return fire," Chen ordered, her voice tight with controlled fury. "Concentrate all firepower on the Titan's main cannon. We can't let them fire that weapon again." As the battle raged on, neither side noticing the small shuttle that slipped away from the Titan, cloaked and running silent. Aboard the shuttle, Sarax the Lyrani worked feverishly at the controls, his normally calm demeanor shattered. Beside him sat Dr. Ilara Vance, a human xenobiologist who had been his secret contact for years. "We have to reach Admiral Chen," Ilara said, her voice urgent. "What we've discovered, it changes everything." Sarax nodded grimly. "If we can end this war before it's too late, before the precursors notice." As their shuttle raced towards the EFS Phoenix, the battle reached a fever pitch. The Confederation's numerical advantage was offset by the crippling effects of Operation Hydra and the superior technology of the Phoenix fleet. But the Titan's Graviton Lance remained a deadly equalizer, its mere presence forcing the human ships to fight defensively. On the Phoenix's bridge, Admiral Chen received the urgent communication from the approaching shuttle. Her eyes widened as she processed the information. "Cease fire," she ordered, her voice cutting through the chaos of battle. "All ships, cease fire immediately." Captain Okafor looked at her in shock. "Admiral." Chen's face was grim. "The game has changed, Zora. We've all been played for fools." As the human fleet pulled back, confusion spread through the Confederation ranks. Grand Admiral Calvor, seeing an opportunity, prepared to press the attack. But before he could give the order, a new signal cut across all communication channels. The holograms of both Admiral Chen and Syrax, the Lyurani, appeared on the bridges of every ship in both fleets. "This war must end now," Chen declared, her voice resonating with authority. Syrax continued, his melodic tones tinged with urgency. "What we are about to tell you will shake the foundations of everything you believe. But for the sake of all sentient life in the galaxy, you must listen." As the leaders of both fleets listened in stunned silence, Syrax and Chen began to unveil a truth that had been hidden for millennia. A truth about the true origins of both humanity and the species of the Confederation. A truth about ancient guardians and slumbering threats. And as understanding dawned, the realization spread that the battle they had been fighting was meaningless compared to the real war that loomed on the horizon. A war not just for territory or resources, but for the very survival of all intelligent life in the galaxy. The Proxima Centauri system, which had been poised to become a graveyard for thousands, instead became the birthplace of an unlikely alliance. For in the face of the terror that Syrax and Chen revealed, old enmities seemed petty and insignificant. As the guns fell silent and diplomats scrambled to make sense of this new reality, one thing became clear: the galaxy would never be the same again. The turning tide. The grand chamber of the Galactic Confederation's central spire, once a symbol of unchallenged authority, now hummed with an undercurrent of tension. Representatives from 100 species, including humanity for the first time, gathered around the ancient table. The revelations from Proxima Centauri had shaken the foundations of galactic society. Admiral Helena Chen stood tall, her crisp Earth Federation uniform a stark contrast to the ornate robes of the alien dignitaries. Beside her, Syrax the Lyurani seemed unusually subdued, the weight of his knowledge visible in the droop of his shoulders. High Counselor Zixthor, his chin dulled with stress, called the emergency session to order. "We are gathered here," he began, his voice lacking its usual imperious tone, "to address the grave threat revealed to us by xenoanthropologist Syrax and our human allies." The word allies sent a ripple through the chamber. Just days ago, such a term would have been unthinkable. Syrax stepped forward, activating a holographic display that filled the center of the room. "What you are about to see has been pieced together from ancient records, hidden transmissions, and archaeological evidence that spans millennia." The display showed a galaxy far more ancient than any had imagined. Vast empires rose and fell in the blink of an eye. Entire species flourished and vanished. Long ago, Syrax explained, a race we know only as the precursors achieved technological singularity. They spread across the galaxy, reshaping worlds and bending the laws of physics to their will. But they were not alone. The hologram shifted, showing shadowy, terrifying forms that defied description. Several council members recoiled in instinctive fear. The precursors encountered something in the void between galaxies, something ancient, hungry, and utterly alien, a threat so great that they devoted all their resources to combating it. Admiral Chen picked up the narrative. The precursors knew they might not survive. So they seeded worlds across the galaxy with life, guided our evolution, hoping that one day we might take up their fight. Zixthor's compound eyes narrowed. "Are you suggesting that both humanity and a Confederation species are artificial creations?" "Not artificial," Syrax corrected. "Guided. The precursors gave us the potential, but our development was our own. They left guardians, immensely powerful AI constructs, to watch over us and intervene only if absolutely necessary. The Athens Array," Chen added. "The mysterious structure we discovered in the Kuiper Belt. It wasn't just a leftover piece of alien tech. It was one of these guardians, dormant for eons until our wars risked drawing the attention of the greater threat." Murmurs of disbelief and shock rippled through the chamber. Grand Admiral Calvor, still nursing wounds from the battle at Proxima Centauri, spoke up. "If what you say is true, why reveal itself now? Why not earlier?" Syrax's expression grew grim. "Because the threat is returning. The Guardian AIs are awakening across the galaxy, preparing for a war that will dwarf anything we've ever known. Our conflict, our petty squabbles over resources, risked destroying the very civilizations the precursors hoped would stand against the darkness. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Centuries of assumed galactic history, of species superiority and ancient rivalries, crumbled in the face of this new reality. President Amelia Rosario, joining via hologram from Earth, broke the silence. We stand at a crossroads. We can cling to our old hatreds, our petty grievances, and face extinction. Or we can forge a new path, united against a threat that would consume us all. Her words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of history. For a moment, it seemed the old animosities might resurface. But then, slowly, nods of agreement began to spread through the chamber. High Counselor Zixthor, his voice heavy with the burden of leadership, spoke. We must prepare. Not as individual species, not as separate empires, but as inheritors of the precursor's legacy. The Galactic Confederation must be reformed, with humanity as full and equal members. The declaration sent shockwaves through the assembly. But as the initial surprise faded, a new emotion took hold. Determination. The prospect of facing an existential threat had done what centuries of diplomacy could not. It had united the galaxy. As the Council debated the specifics of this new alliance, Admiral Chen received an urgent communication. Captain Okuffer's hologram appeared, her expression tense. Admiral, we're detecting massive energy signatures at the edge of charted space. The Guardian A's. They're activating. All of them. Chen's breath caught in her throat. She turned to address the Council, her voice cutting through the discussion. We're out of time. The Guardians are awakening. The enemy is coming. The chamber erupted into a flurry of activity. Age-old protocols were discarded as new chains of command were established on the fly. The combined technological might of humanity and the Confederation was brought to bear on the looming threat. In orbital shipyards across 1,000 worlds, new vessels were constructed at a feverish pace. Weapons of unimaginable power, long hidden away as too dangerous to use, were dusted off and improved upon. The Athens array, fully awakened, began to share the knowledge of the precursors, elevating the allied species to new heights of technological achievement. But even as they prepared, questions lingered. Would it be enough? Could species that were at war mere days ago now fight side by side? And what horrors awaited them in the void between galaxies? As the first tendrils of an unimaginable darkness began to creep into the outermost regions of the Milky Way, humanity and their newfound allies steeled themselves for the greatest fight in the history of the galaxy. The universe held its breath, waiting to see if this fledgling alliance could stand against a threat that had brought even the mighty precursors to their knees. In her quarters aboard the ESS Phoenix, now the flagship of the combined fleet, Admiral Helena Chen looked out at the stars. They seemed colder now, more distant, hiding untold dangers. But as she watched, pinpricks of light began to appear, the assembled warships of 100 species, gathering for the fight of their lives. A grim smile touched her lips. Humanity had fought its way to the galactic stage, demanding respect and recognition. Now they would fight not just for themselves, but for all sentient life. It was a heavy burden, but one they would bear with pride. "We're ready," she whispered to the uncaring void. "Come and get us." As if in answer, alarms began to blare throughout the ship. The enemy had been sighted. The final battle for the galaxy was about to begin. A new galactic order. The void between galaxies churned with unnatural energies as the combined fleets of the newly formed Galactic Alliance faced the nightmarish hordes of the extragalactic threat. Ships of every size and configuration, from 100 different species, moved in perfect synchronization, their differences set aside in the face of annihilation. At the heart of the fleet, the ESS Phoenix led the charge. On its bridge, Admiral Helena Chen stood resolute, coordinating the most diverse armada the galaxy had ever seen. Beside her, High Counselor Zixthor's hologram flickered, a testament to the unprecedented cooperation between former enemies. Second wave incoming. Captain Okafor reported, her voice steady despite the chaos unfolding on the tactical displays. Energy signatures unlike anything we've ever seen. Chen nodded grimly. All ships, execute maneuver Omega. Bring the Athens array online. Across the battlefield, the massive form of the Athens array pulsed with eldritch energies. The precursor Guardian Eye, fully awakened and integrated with the combined technological might of the Alliance, stood as their last, best hope against the encroaching darkness. As the enemy drew near, their true form became apparent. They were not ships in any conventional sense, but vast, living structures that defied the laws of physics. Tendrils of dark energy lashed out, rending space-time itself. By the stars, Sixth Thor chittered, his compound eyes wide with terror. What are these abominations? Serax's voice came through the comm, tinged with awe and fear. They are the antithesis of life as we know it. Beings from a universe where our physical laws do not apply. This is what the precursors fought and feared. The battle was joined, and immediately it became clear that conventional tactics would not suffice. Alliance ships fired weapons that could shatter planets, only to see their energy absorbed and redirected. The enemy's counterattacks warped reality itself, entire squadrons disappearing into pocket dimensions or being twisted into impossible shapes. But humanity and their allies were not without their own surprises. Ships equipped with reverse-engineered precursor tech phased in and out of normal space, striking at the enemy's weak points before disappearing. The Athens array projected fields of altered physics, creating zones where the invaders' reality-warping abilities were nullified. On a dozen fronts, the tide of battle shifted back and forth. For every victory, there was a setback. Entire star systems were sacrificed as tactical necessities, their suns transformed into improvised weapons against the cosmic horrors. In the midst of the chaos, Admiral Chen received an urgent transmission from Earth. President Rosario's hologram appeared, her face etched with determination. "Admiral, our scientists have made a breakthrough. We found a way to close the breach between universes, but it will require sacrifices." Chen listened intently as Rosario outlined the plan. Her eyes widened, understanding the immense cost it would require. "Madam President," she said softly, "you realize what this means?" Rosario nodded solemnly. "I do. But the alternative is the end of everything. The choice has already been made." As the transmission ended, Chen turned to her crew, her voice ringing with authority. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen. Initiate Operation Firewall. I repeat, initiate Operation Firewall." Across the battlefield, Alliance ships began to move into new formations. At the center, the Athens array's energy output doubled, then tripled, drawing power from sources beyond normal spacetime. The enemy, sensing the shift, redoubled their assault. Reality buckled under the strain of their attacks. Entire fleets were unmade in instants, their component atoms scattered across dimensions. But the Alliance held firm. Every ship lost, every life sacrificed, bought precious seconds for the plan to unfold. The Athens array began to glow with an intensity that rivaled supernovas, channeling energies that had not been seen since the dawn of the universe. In the heart of the maelstrom, the EFS Phoenix led a desperate charge. All power to forward shields. Chen commanded, her knuckles white, as she gripped the command rail. "We need to get closer. We have to reach the breach point." The ship shuddered under impacts that could shatter worlds, its advanced shields barely holding. Around them, Alliance vessels threw themselves into the path of enemy attacks, buying the flagship the seconds it needed to reach its target. As they approached the heart of the enemy formation, the true scale of the interdimensional breach became apparent. It was a wound in the fabric of reality, a howling vortex of unspace that defied comprehension. "Athens array at full power," Okafor reported, her voice barely audible over the sound of the ship coming apart around them. "Ready to initiate closure sequence on your command." Chen took a deep breath, knowing that this moment would define not just humanity, but all sentient life in the galaxy. Do it. The Athens array released its pent-up energy in a single, universe-altering pulse. The laws of physics rewrote themselves in an instant. The breach began to close, reality knitting itself back together in a cascade of impossible energies. The enemy, realizing too late the trap they had fallen into, tried desperately to retreat. But the collapsing breach pulled them in, their vast forms twisted and broken by forces beyond even their control. On the Phoenix's failing bridge, Chen watched as the universe seemed to fold in on itself. All ships, emergency jumped to fallback coordinates. Now, in a flash of light, the surviving Alliance ships vanished, propelled to safety by their faster-than-light drives. Behind them, the breach collapsed in on itself, taking with it the invading horrors and a significant portion of the galaxy's outer rim. The silence that followed was deafening. Slowly, reports began to trickle in from across Alliance space. The enemy was gone. The threat had been neutralized. But the cost had been beyond imagination. Entire sectors of space were simply gone, erased from existence by the finale of Operation Firewall. Billions of lives had been lost in the fighting and the final gambit. The galaxy would bear the scars of this conflict for eons to come. As the Alliance fleet regrouped in the shattered remains of what was once the Sagittarius arm, the weight of their victory hung heavy. They had saved the galaxy, perhaps the universe itself, but at a terrible price. In the weeks and months that followed, as the dust of war settled, a new galactic order began to take shape. The old Confederation was gone, replaced by a true alliance of equals. Humanity, once the upstart newcomers, now stood as respected leaders in this new era. Admiral Chen, hailed as the architect of victory, stood before the newly formed Galactic Senate. Her voice, tired but resolute, echoed through the chamber. "We have faced the darkness and emerged, battered but unbroken. Now we must look to the future. We must rebuild, not just our worlds, but our understanding of the universe and our place in it." As seeds of new stars were sown in the voids left by war, as shattered planets were reforged, and new alliances were cemented, the species of the Milky Way looked to the future with both hope and trepidation. They had inherited the legacy of the precursors, but they had also inherited their burden. For in the vast emptiness between galaxies, in dimensions beyond normal space, other threats might yet lurk, but this time they would face them united, as guardians of a galaxy reborn. Admiral Chen, standing at the viewport of the rebuilt Phoenix, watched as ships of 100 worlds worked together to construct a new Athens array, a symbol not just of defense, but of the united future they would forge together. The stars no longer seemed cold or distant. They were beacons of possibility, of adventures yet to come. Humanity had found its place among them, not through conquest or subjugation, but through courage, innovation, and the ability to unite even the most bitter of enemies against a common threat. As the first light of a new galactic day dawned, Helena Chen allowed herself a small smile. The road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, but for the first time in eons, the future of the galaxy looked bright. The legacy of humanity, and of all sentient life, was just beginning.